Good morning, everybody. I've got a open challenge on the board. My opponent's rated 1287. This is a 20 plus 10 game, and we are in Vienna Gambit territory now. So we've had e4, e5. I've played the Vienna game with knight c3, my favourite opening, and then we've had knight to f6. Looks perfectly natural, and he's accepted the Vienna Gambit. Now this is already, it might even be a mistake to capture the pawn. So if you're not familiar with the Vienna Gambit, I assume that if you've been following my channel for a while you will be, but this is the idea. So that basically with the knight here, he has no squares to go to. These two are covered by the knight, and these two are not that. These two are covered by the queen. So there are really only two moves: either the knight retreats or the inaccurate queen e7 to pin the pawn onto the king. Okay, so the knight retreats. Now it's very important we have to play knight f3, and that prevents the queen from coming to this square with check, which could cause problems. Okay, d5. I quite often see d6 here. d5 is less common, so I'm looking at that's defended by the queen. d4 is the obvious move, defends this pawn and creates a discovered attack to regain our lost pawn. And you can see now black has 0 development. 6 moves played, and he's got one piece out on the board, and that's it. So now the knight is pinned on the queen. So what we want to do now, we can capture the pawn. We can't bring the bishop out to here, which is a natural square looking down on f7. We don't want to bring the bishop out to here right now because it just prompts c6, right? With tempo, kicking the bishop away again, right? Bishop e2 is playable, or bishop d3. Or we simply recapture. I think I'll probably just recapture the pawn now, because that's a move that I know I can play. It's a move that I know I want to play. This bishop, there are question marks over where this bishop wants to go, right? And what are you thinking? G5? Is that your plan? So right now you see I've got one piece on the king side, one piece on the queen side to move, and then I've got options of castling either way. Now, in general, it makes a lot of sense to castle short with the Vienna Gambit accepted because I have no f-pawn, and it puts my rook straight onto the semi-open file. So, I don't know, I'm kind of inclined to play this. I just think about attacks my opponent could have. So a common idea is for the knight to come in and to kind of target c2. So for that reason alone, I'm going to put my bishop here. And if he wants to come in, he might think about taking my bishop, but the queen can recapture. But at least now I'm ready to castle. You know, I've regained my pawn, and in return, you know, in a very, very comfortable position. I have 4 pieces developed on the board, plus I'm ready to castle straight away. Okay, he's come out to pin that. I'm just going to ignore it and crack on. If he wants to trade off his bishop, then fair play. Go for it. Knock yourself out. He's just invested a move to bring that bishop out to the board. I'm going to put the question to the bishop. I'm going to say, go on. What's your game? What are you going to do? This is unprotected. This is unprotected. This bishop is now hanging, so needs to make its mind up. Okay. This is defended twice, so no dice there. This is pinned, can't move that. Black wants the castle, has already slightly weakened his position on this side of the board. I could push another pawn and put the question to this bishop now. I could also push up, but that put the bishop back here, then looking down at this pawn. Is there anything to be gained by that? Another idea could be queen e1, queen g3. Line it up with the king. Also gets the queen out of one pin, but it does actually put her in another one from the other bishop. So, what is correct? I like my centre. Yeah, I'm going to push ahead with this plan. I like this idea of queen g3. It's the final piece of the development problem. You know, I just need to get my queen off the back rank, connect my rooks, and then we're into the middle game. Your default idea in the middle game is you want to be improving your stuff. Right now, if I could drop my queen in there, then that's called checkmate. That would be good. I'm just going to stick my queen here for now. She can't be harassed by this bishop. It's in the wrong area of the board. And in fact, this bishop is now quarantined in this section because he can't go there and can't go there. So until this pawn, this c pawn moves, which I think would be a decent plan for black, this bishop is useless. And when your opponent has a piece like that, you want to ignore that piece. You absolutely do not want to trade any of your good pieces for that piece. So for example, right now, I think bishop takes knight would be a very decent move for black. Black hasn't played it. So with that in mind, I'm half inclined to push b4, put the bishop back here, and protect my knight. Because the alternative is, where's my knight going to go? Is it going to go here? I don't know. But then that leaves me with a nasty backwards pawn here. So maybe actually knight there, c3, could be sensible. Or knight here and then into e3, looking at this bishop. Yeah, I'm going to do that. Then c3 and knight here. Yeah, that's the plan. Really make this bishop look bad. Black at some point is going to have to move the c-pawn to release this bishop, or get it back into the game. But yeah, I prefer knight here. See, rather than this, here my knight is blocked in by all my own pieces, so it's got no progression from that point. c3 can be played at any point. I'm not in any rush. I think if the queen starts to come and sniff around it, then I'll just push it forwards. Maybe a rook here to defend the back pawn of the chain. A knight here puts pressure on the bish. Notice, oh. Okay, then now that is a move that merits some consideration. It does indeed. So, things have just changed. And we had a really, really interesting session yesterday in my breakthrough group with Chess Bootcamp, where we looked at 12 different positions that I literally got from my recent games, Blitz and Rapid. And in each of those positions, there was one good move. And the challenge was to find it. Now, and what we really got out of that session was the major difference that apparently very minor and trivial move choices can make to a game. Literally, we're talking about a position where if you make the right move, you're +5, and if you make the wrong one, you're -1. Like, literally goes from winning to bad type of thing. Now, things I noticed with this move. One, black's just moved the pawn 2 squares, which means that the en passant option is available. Okay, so if I was to take that, yes, we open up this file. The e1 square is currently out of bounds. I can protect it with c3, but it's a bit slow. Pushing this pawn, the pawn's undefended also. So en passant is an option. Then rook takes is pretty much a given, isn't it? Because if pawn takes, I hit the bishop. The bishop's then pinned if this pawn captures, yeah? So if I capture en passant, he's got to take with a rook, and then do I just drop my bishop in here? I kind of like that. I've also then got ideas of moving my knight and opening up my rook as well. So that's definitely a possibility, is the en passant capture. Another idea is this idea of maybe putting my knight onto this square, forking the queen and the bishop. That could also be good. This just feels slow right now. I'm going to take en passant. I'm going to open stuff up. Now the queen is defending this. It's the only defender of that. Yeah, exactly. You had to take with that. Now if I do this, he's not going to put rook there because of bishop. Okay, I do this. That's out. Okay, so bishop here. That's out of bounds. That's out of bounds. That's out of bounds because queen takes. So the rook's either going to bugger off somewhere over there, which is not that square, or that one. Okay, or he's got to retreat. So I'm going to assume I do this and rook goes back there defending this pawn. Then I hit the bishop. Bishop has to move. Or I bring in my knight. I'm going to bring in my knight, just reconnect my rooks. Now I've got two attackers on this bishop, yeah? So the bishop's got to do something. And as soon as the bishop moves, this pawn's then pinned. So I'd love to be able to capture this one, but it's currently defended by the rook. If I do this and the rook moves, then I can't capture the bishop. Can't capture the pawn on h6 with my bishop. But I am liking my activity. Yeah, this rook's not doing anything, but it feels like everything else is potentially involved in the assault on the black king. I'm liking this. The rook's got to go back there, because otherwise I kick the bishop and checkmate. So if I do this, rook has to go back to f7. And if f7... What about this idea still? I've got this as well. And that covers f7. That's very important. So this, but then I haven't got bishop there. So let's just look at this. Hits the queen. Yeah, okay, so he's been forced to capture. Okay, that's fine. Now I can retake with the... Didn't really think through what would happen if the bishop traded off, actually. So I can't now recapture with the rook, which is what I would have liked to have done. This pawn, no, can't take that. I think I'm going to have to take with the queen. I don't want to take with the pawn. Two reasons. One, it opens up a file to my king, and it closes the file for my rook. So I think it has to be queen, but I'm just going to sanity check before that happens. So if queen takes here... Is he going to play this? No. Because if I take and he tries to pin the bishop, just put my queen back here. He can't take the bishop because that puts him in check. So go ahead, we'll take that with the queen. You see how useless this bishop is still. Bishop's been there for a long time. From move 8, bishop's been here. And this was one of these kind of toothless pins, really. So I castled, he moved, I kicked the bishop back, and this bishop has been stuck there now for the duration. Alright, now. Opponent attacks this pawn that's undefended. That's a very natural looking move. Can't do this because it drops the queen. I'd like to put my queen back here. If I put my queen here, but is there any reason not to play that? No, let's just play that. It defends the pawn. It also cuts off this entire diagonal for that bishop. So now this bishop has a playground of 2 squares. Not great. Okay, I'm very conscious of the pin on the bish here. That's defended twice. Probably want to put my queen back on g3. Interesting. Knight here is a thought to defend the bishop. It's not a bad move, that. g3, I'm not liking. So I've got knight there and I've got g3. Knight here. He's still got this, but then I've still got this. Okay, I'm going to play knight there. I'm going to move my queen at the first opportunity. My opponent is playing quite well in this situation. I think the cards are stacked against him a little bit, but he's digging deep. So it's good to see. Material is equal. My advantage, I have the bishop pair. I want to put my queen back on g3. I can't put my queen there, obviously. This knight isn't great. Can't really progress. This knight could come in here. I've got maybe bishop here, checkmate idea, but it's a bit telegraphed, isn't it? It's a bit obvious. I think rook a to e1 as well makes sense. It's an open file. I want to get a major piece onto that file. So queen there, doubling up with this bishop. Bishop's then triple protected by knight, queen, and rook, like so. Rook a e1 makes sense. Queen g3 makes sense. Just got to see what my opponent wants to do. But rated 1287, this is a good... Okay. Right, knight to here. Interesting. That's adding another attacker to the bishop. But like I say, if I move queen g3, that's 3 defenders. Now, if I move here, the knight can't attack. I also have the option of takes and rook takes. Bishop takes, rook takes. I'm in a new pin. That's defended now only by the queen. I take, rook takes. Oh, actually, but with queen g3, then I have 2 attackers on the knight, don't I? So that's it. Sold. Queen g3. Also notice now that the rook is no longer defending h6. Okay, so the present issue. Rook takes bishop is just not on because it's defended 3 times. Right. More serious issue is the knight's attacked twice. Knight can't go there, gets taken. If the knight takes there, I recapture. Okay. Question. Knight or rook? Now, knight seems very, very natural because it's centralising the knight, it's getting the knight closer to the middle of the board. I don't really want to be trading off rooks at this time. My knight can then maybe come here, looking at the rook and g7. So there we go, sold. If rook takes, he's just giving up the exchange. My next thought is maybe to think about doubling up my rooks on the f-file. Starting with rook f3. Does he want to go there and hit the queen? Shall I initiate proceedings? Because this actually comes with a checkmate threat. Actually, that is pretty good. But here, rook goes here, but no. Okay, sold. Right? So, problem number 1, mate in 1. Problem number 2, attacking the rook. Okay, and the rook can't go here and prevent both because bishop takes rook. Knight takes, queen takes knight. It's not good. Another problem with this move here, of course, is that it now means that this pawn is defended only by the king. The queen's no longer defending the pawn, only defended by the king. So he's given me this move. This is a knight on the rim that's certainly not dim at all. Right, you can see my good bishop now. Remember, we put the bishop on d3 quite early on in the game. Not necessarily for this reason, but it just happens to be defending that square. And the point is that this bishop happens to be looking at squares that are near this guy. They're near the king, right? This bishop is just awful and has been for the duration of the game. So what this means is that black is kind of playing a man down. It's like black's playing, with a sin bin. Okay. Wow. Okay, I'm going to take with the rook. If takes, I've takes, and I've still got this option. Okay, I think that was the best. Okay. Now, do I take with the king? I think I take with the king, because queen takes defended by the knight is still on, yeah? Does black have any checks? Well, no. I think that's the only one, and it doesn't work. So king takes. And I've still got this. Now, black's got to move the knight, really, to defend that. Can he go there? Yes. It can. But then I'll probably... I don't know, I could even just move my king back. Got to avoid getting back ranked, but... Well, notice material's still equal. So that exchange from black was critical. I thought he was kind of winning. And I failed to notice that black can exchange his way out of trouble. Okay, that's an odd move. I'd even say it's bad. I think knight there was much better. Problem again with this knight is it can't go there, it can't go there, it can't go there. So its only possible moves are retreating moves. And but I now have this, don't I? And that is just devastating. I didn't even notice it. This is a royal fork, king and queen. The piece that's defending that square is actually pinned by the queen, and that finishes the game. Black's in check, so he can't, for example, give check, even if that did work. And that's just curtains, really. Because on the next move, I'm going to take the queen. And where did that come from? Yeah, okay. Very good game. Very good game. Well played. You dug deep there. So fascinating. But the point is that yes, so one thing is that the king and queen are in this long L, right? It's like a long knight's move, which means that it is forkable there, or in theory, kind of E9 would also fork them. But the reason why it works is because I've got to pin the pawn. If I didn't have my queen here, obviously it didn't work because pawn takes. So, interesting game. So let's just review quickly. Then we might have a look at the computer analysis. So, Vienna Gambit is already on the back foot. And you can see this lack of development. So he played knight f6 in 1.9 seconds. And bottom line is, if you don't know this pattern, it's very easy to fall into these things. But it's not like the Vienna Gambit is a left wing, left field, out there kind of opening. It's pretty common, right? So in this situation, you see, it just looks so natural to develop your opposite knight. Very often we do it just instinctively. So look, maybe my opponent's never seen it before. I don't know. I could actually check his history. Okay, and takes is the wrong move, because now we push. Knight has to come here to keep the queen out. D4 shores up the situation. Discovered attack on the pawn. Pin. But you see, my opponent did 2 bishop knight pins, right? And I wasn't really concerned about either of them too much. Recapture. I'm now +2 in development. And what's the point of h6? Really, what's the point of h6? Right? You're in the opening phase of the game. This pawn move does nothing to aid your development. It takes a square away from the knight. Right? This bishop can already come out into the board. And so can everything else. It's just like, develop a piece, for goodness sake. Bring your pieces out. Knight here. Bishop here. You know, there are options. Anyway, so I develop, and notice that this bishop, remember, came to play a key part in the game later on. It's here. It's looking down towards the king's side. It's not maybe as ideal as this, right? And it's not as kind of extending as bishop b5, which would just walk into c6. Anyway, so another pin. And it's like water off a duck's back. I don't care. I'll just castle out of trouble. Get my king out the pin. Defend the knight with a rook, which frees up the queen. Happy days. Now he develops a piece. Now I kick, and the bishop retreats. And I think the bishop more or less lived out the rest of his days on that square, didn't he? Centralise the queen with the idea of queen g3. And we know that that turned out to be useful, queen g3. Right? It really, really does help to play through the game and to see the origins. How did positions evolve, you know? He brings his queen forward, defending the bishop. I now reroute my knight and decide to bring it this way rather than this way, rather than this, because this square, although it looks neat, the knight has no future because of all the junk I've got on dark squares. Okay, so I want to put it on a dark square. So I'm going to use 2 moves to move my knight from dark to dark instead of 1 move moving my knight from dark to light. Okay. Important the colour complexes are. Right, and now the outrageous f5. And I would be interested to see what the fish makes of this. It's weird because, yeah, it's defended 1, 2, 3, 4 times. It looks very secure, but it's not defended against this. So I had a look, and we capture en passant. Now he has to take back with the rook, right? Because if he takes back with the pawn here, the bishop falls, because it's pinned. And you would just attack the pin piece with a pawn, pin it and win it. Simples. Now, this is an obvious kind of move, but I decide to do this now, right? Hit the bishop. Bishop trades off. Now, black here used this tactic twice in the game, trading off to resolve an attack, and it's a perfectly valid way to resolve the challenge of an attack. Now he develops his final minor piece. This is move 16. But again, look, that knight is not in a great place. I play c3 now. It's an important defensive move. I don't want to give up my central pawn that's controlling some good squares. Doubles up rooks. Defends. That's 3 defenders to attackers. Nothing to worry about. Knight comes in now and move the queen. That's still 1, 2, 3 defenders, 3 attackers. And now we could get a flurry of exchanges, and we do. Takes. Rook isn't going to capture. Now he brings his knight round. Problem with this move, this knight is very late to the party anyway. He's only just like turned up. Okay, all right. It blocks the queen's defense of this, and the game really doesn't go on too much longer because now I notice. Literally, I did not see this possibility, but now that the queen is no longer defending that square, suddenly this looks good. And I thought this was winning because I thought, right, I'm either going to take the rook or I'm going to checkmate. The difference is that rook takes f1 comes with check, so I have to respond. I could have taken back with the bishop, which would have discouraged rook takes. Maybe that would have been better. But I kind of like the fact that my bishop's on this diagonal. Rook takes, king takes. Important, again, keeping my bishop on this diagonal. Why? I don't know. Instinct just said, I want to keep my bishop where it's controlling more squares. My bishop was here, then it's controlling a useless diagonal up towards this corner of the board where there's nothing going on. And here it's looking at the back of the pawn's head. Pointless. Pointless, pointless, pointless. This bishop here can have an impact on the game. Knight now moves back here, right? So this knight's now gone like this. And then the final move is this, right? Now, at what point did Black put his queen and his king in that formation? You know, should he have noticed? Very early on, right? Puts his queen here on move 12. Would you notice that? Very, very hard. Very, very hard to notice that that's a long L, therefore forkable by a knight on a square that's already protected. You know, you're not going to see that, but very, very interesting game. Hope it's useful for you and inspired you. If you're not playing the Vienna Gambit, why not? Because it's awesome, right? So there you go. Nice, slightly longer game for you today, guys. Thanks for watching. See you later.